FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220, or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Remember waking up early just to catch your favorite cartoons? WESN brings back those magical mornings with Retro Saturdays.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born!
Where the young at heart relive the fun. Join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, only on WESN, the content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I am Takia Thompson, your host for our Throwback Thursday show. Now, we're starting off this morning in our time shift segment. This year marks 181 years since the arrival of the first East Indian indentured laborers to Trinidad and Tobago aboard the fatal Razak in 1845, a journey that would forever shape the nation's cultural, social, and economic landscape. In recognition of Indian Arrival Month, the National Council of Indian Culture, or NCIC, is commemorating this milestone with a special art exhibition titled Celebrating Our Indo-Trinbagonian Legacy on Sunday, 24th of May, 2026. Curated by St. Augustine, St. Helena councillor Richard Rampersad, the exhibition explores themes of heritage, identity, resilience, and cultural evolution through visual storytelling. This morning, we speak with the councillor about the inspiration behind the exhibition and the importance of preserving Indo-Trinbagonian history for future generations. Good morning, Mr. Richard.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Now, tell us, what inspired the theme celebrating our Indo-Trinbagonian legacy for this exhibition?
This year, like the many other years before that, we always wanted to show to the public the works of our East Indian visual artists and by extension all nationals of Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
We really wanted to highlight all the nuances of East Indian culture in our space. Since the establishment of the Heritage Center in 2016, these art exhibitions has been a permanent feature, one of our signature events at the Heritage Center every year. And we really try to highlight, celebrate, promote, inform and educate the citizenry about all these different elements of East Indian culture. You know, the NCIC would be known for the performing arts, the dance, the musical compositions, but the visual arts, we felt that needed a space within the overall scheme of things, offerings at the NCIC.
Absolutely. Now, how does the exhibition reflect the journey of Indo-Trimbegonians from indentureship to modern society?
This exhibition really illustrates that whole story of the indentureship project, along with the present realities of the Indo-Trimbegonian population. So we have a collection of 30 visual artists exhibiting in this exhibition, and a total of 50 pieces. Each artist would interpret the theme using their own technique, their style, their own artistic competence, acumen, and really put forward compositions that reflects the period of indenture straight up to this present day. So it's a mix of themes that reflect rituals, East Indian architecture, the indentureship scenes, several varied themes were explored, all painting a picture as to what the Indo-Trimbegonian experience is to them.
Wow, just wow. And tying in that, you tied in and said that these particular artworks, so, you know, in that exhibition, believes that it carries a special or powerful message as to why it was being shown.
Art is very sacred, art is very powerful, because art is a form of visual language that communicates. You know, since time immemorial, persons have been engaged in art making. The cave arts in France, the Stonehenge in England, all of these forms of visual arts has dominated our space from day one.
Yeah.
It's no different in our current era. Artists probe their space through the use of line, color, shape, form, texture, and all the different elements of design that goes into our work. And I am so pleased by the response we would have gotten when we released the call for works for artists to come and exhibit and tell their story of their journey, their identity through paint.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, in your view, how has that Indo-Trimbegonian culture evolved over the past 181 years?
Culture is fluid, it's not static. All groups would face that progression, that fluidity of culture. There's a lot of changes, adaptation, memory erasure that influence different things.
Right.
When we look at the work that is being presented, I like to situate it as a sort of a visual archive. So what the artists are really doing, they are presenting for the consumption of the viewers, a work that will sort of remain as a visual documentation throughout time. So 30 years from now, 100 years from now, someone looking at these pieces would say, okay, this is what the landscape was at that time. These were some of the socio-cultural contexts and themes present at that time.
Yeah.
So it really is a visual archiving and a visual documentation of life.
Now, I do believe you started to touch on this other question that I'm about to ask, but maybe just expand a bit more on it. Why is it important, you know, for that younger generation to remain connected to their heritage and history?
Well, you know, as the old saying goes, you need to know your past and where you came from to know where you're heading.
Yeah.
And I think that is important. But knowing more than that, knowing your history gives you a sense of place. It makes things make sense. You understand why certain names are ascribed to certain places in Trinidad. You understand why you carry a particular surname. You understand why there's a prevalence of so many different groups in the land, because you would then understand what the colonial project was and migration and the history that everybody shared in this country, because it's a shared history of pluralism and the plantation economy and these different types of theories surrounding identity.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned, that preservation of culture before with the arts. So just to share on how art helps preserve culture memory in ways that textbooks, maybe can't capture the way that art would. How can art do that?
Visual arts will paint a picture.
Yeah.
For some, imagery might be a very powerful way to comprehend or to grasp a concept. And essentially, that is what visual arts and paintings and sculptures do. It's a form of visual literacy that is a learning tool, all right, through the artist's use of all the elements and principles of design. And it's a good way of archiving and documenting. Before the time of cameras, before the invention of cameras, art historians, archaeologists, they would rely on artworks.
Yes.
Objects, sculptures of a people to ascertain so many information about that group. And it aligns with the bigger idea of material culture. How can we elicit information about a community through their art and the objects that they make?
Yeah.
And what are some of the meanings they ascribe to these things? Wow. So the artwork featured at this exhibition is no different. There's so many stories that can be said based on these paintings and these sculptures that will be exhibited on the 23rd of May.
Nice. And how would you say has the culture influenced the wider national identity of Trinidad and Tobago?
It definitely has. You see nuances of the East Indian elements in all facets of Trinbagonian cultural identity.
Yeah.
When we open the call for artists to exhibit their artwork that reflects the theme, the Indo-Trinbagonian experience, interestingly enough, and I'm very excited to report that we had a lot of submissions by non-East Indian artists. Wow. And for me, that was extremely encouraging and inspiring to see. And it's not the first time that is the type of feedback we got. In fact, since we started these exhibitions in 2016, that is the type of response we have been getting. So you see how other local artists are inspired by East Indian cultural expression and East Indian themes in their work. So it's really a nice hybridization of all the cultural elements in our space coming together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we touched on that storytelling aspect part of it. Now, the importance, just, wanted to share on the importance of it, and also looking at art bridging that gap between generations and culture. Can you share a bit on that?
I like that you asked that question. One of the things, the interesting features about this exhibition is the vast grouping of artists we have in terms of age demographics.
Right.
So we would have received submissions from secondary school students, and we received submissions from established practicing local artists who are very senior in their career.
Yeah.
And that says something. That says that persons are interested in the work that we're doing at the NCIC. It says that persons are connected to the theme of the work that we're doing. And it says also that persons are finding and drawing inspiration, motivation from the team and the need, the desire to produce work that aligns with what we're doing at the NCIC. So it shows continuity and it shows hope.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now, in today's society, why is it so important, to have these conversations about ancestry, migration, and even cultural resilience?
So similar to what I would have mentioned earlier, it gives you a sense of place, belonging, identity. It allows for things to make sense. And I feel like you have an obligation to know where you came from. I feel like your existence isn't about being in a vacuum, but to be very okura with the different streams of consciousness that would have been responsible for your being.
Right.
And the work that your ancestors would have done for us to live and to experience the Trinbagonian reality the way we are today, through their sacrifices and that type of thing, their resilience, their determination, their faith, and their courage.
Wow. And you have touched on this, but give us a little bit more. How can cultural exhibitions like this contribute or continue to contribute to greater national unity and appreciation for diversity?
There is always this idea that our differences must unite us and not divide us. And interestingly enough, though, persons coming to this show who may come from a different part, culturally, socially, etc., might actually be able to see so many similarities with their own journey and their own belief system. So it's really about having our differences unite us and not divide us. And in saying that, I reflect on one of the painting submissions that we received. It was done by a very prominent local artist by the name of James Armstrong. James Armstrong produced an oil painting that he submitted for this show that shows two musicians playing side by side. One is a tassa drummer and one is a steel pan player. And they are juxtaposed side by side. So you're really seeing what is Trinbagonian in that image. And I like how both ideas and both themes are placed so close proximity to each other because it paints the picture of what we really is here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what do you hope people feel when they leave the exhibition?
They should be inspired. Obviously, they should leave having a greater understanding of what the ideas behind the work were. I hope they get to meet with each individual artist who would be there and just get a sense of what their studio practices, the impetus for their compositions and their creations, etc. I also wish to add, outside of the paintings and sculptures, we are also having simultaneously a pottery exhibition. Yeah, so vessels and ceremonial vessels and objects made from clay also has a common place in East Indian culture. And we thought it's useful to feature some of that. So the pottery pieces that will be on exhibition were done by the potters in Chase Village. They are known as the Kohars. That is the Bhojpuri word for potter. And we're happy that we can show the public some of those pieces because that also has a history from indentureship because in 1898 there were two brothers that came to Trinidad to work as indentured laborers. They went by the name, according to oral tradition, Gulcharan and Sicharan. And after their indentureship period, they would have worked in estates in central Trinidad. And after the indentureship period, they reverted to their caste-based profession of being potters. The Gulcharan lineage settled in Rio Claro, and the Sicharan lineage is in Chase Village. So it's descendants of that lineage who continue to make pottery in the community of Chase Village, and we are happy to feature some of the work. Yeah, and it's traditional Indo-inspired pottery pieces, so ceremonial vessels, utilitarian objects, and that type of thing. So it's a good inclusion in the overall show, and I just thought it's useful. I mentioned that aspect of the exhibition as well.
Yes, definitely. Now, just give us a bit more information on the exhibition itself in terms of the timing and where can we go, so location for it as well.
Sure. The NCIC's Indian Heritage Visual Arts Exhibition takes place on Saturday, the 23rd of May. It opens at 5 p.m., so that is our opening reception. And the show continues for 2 weeks. It comes down on the 9th of June. The exhibition runs from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday. It's free to the public, and I encourage students, adults, young artists, practitioners, or just someone interested in the arts coming and viewing the work.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Richard, for coming on this morning and sharing about it and giving us something to look forward to in terms of our culture, our historical background, and seeing it all come together in one place to tell stories to us. It truly is immaculate. So thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Definitely. Thank you for having me and allowing me to share this very exciting event.
Absolutely. Yes. Guys, we are about to take a short break, but when we come back, we have more engaging conversations, so stay with us.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing@wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In the studio now, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back. Continuing with our time shift segment, once upon a time, a single murder would dominate conversations for days. Today, multiple killings can happen within hours, and for many citizens, it barely registers beyond another social media notification or evening headline. As Trinidad and Tobago continues to grapple with violent crime, gang activity, and repeated states of emergency, questions are now emerging, not only about public safety, but about the psychological impact crime is having on society itself. Have citizens become emotionally exhausted? Are we becoming desensitized to violence? And what does that mean for future generations growing up in an environment where murder scenes, police tape, and gun violence are increasingly common? Criminologist Dr. Randy Sipasad joins us this morning to explore whether Trinidad and Tobago is becoming a nation numb to crime. Good morning, Dr. Sipasad.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now, from a criminologist's perspective, what does it mean for society to become desensitized to crime?
Right, so you're saying that crime is something that is becoming normalized in the society. You're seeing it every day. It would have been years ago, a serious offense was something that was out of the ordinary. It would sort of engender shock, a certain kind of societal reaction to the perpetration of the offense. Now, we've reached a point where it's so commonplace that, people it's just a number on your phone. It's something, it's as if it's the norm now, rather than something that really is associated with any kind of deep emotional reaction, including trauma or disgust or whatever kind of reaction you're talking about. So we are looking at a society that potentially is actually becoming desensitized, and of course there are negative consequences that could go with that as well.
Yeah. And now, can repeated exposure to violent change, show that persons are emotionally, or how they emotionally respond to tragedy?
Yes, indeed it can. What it does is that it reduces your emotional response. And, the unfortunate thing is that I think what that can do is that it unfortunately reduces our willingness, our energy, our motivation to actually do something about the crime. And it is as if we are a society, we could potentially become a society in which we don't necessarily care. And I'm not trying to say that in a bad way. What I'm trying to say is that there would have been a time where, the society at large would have played an important role in terms of containing and controlling the crime situation. So, you would have heard that old adage, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about socialization processes, we're talking about adults intervening when they see youths engaged in unacceptable behavior, etc. What could happen if we are desensitized as a nation is that we step back from that entire role of a nation, so to speak, parenting and guiding its youths so that we ensure that they move along the correct path.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very serious negative consequence, because the thing about it is, and as a lot of research suggests, it's not just law enforcement and the courts and the prisons and the police and all of that really by and large controls the crime situation. Really informal social mechanisms of behavior regulation tend to be far more important. If you think about the majority of persons that perhaps you may know, including yourself, you would find that you do the right thing because you've been socialized in a certain way, you've been brought up in a certain way, there are certain expectations for your behavior, and you don't do the right thing simply because you're afraid of the police or you're afraid of the courts or the prisons, right? So socialization, I think, and the society at large plays a fundamental role when it comes to controlling the crime situation. And I think the society doesn't necessarily recognize that. We do it as parents, we do it as teachers, as community members, etc., but we don't realize just how important our role is. And when we unfortunately become desensitized, what we could potentially do is step back from that role and neglect to engage, in the socialization aspects that reduce the propensity towards crime. And if we do that, then we begin to fail as a society in terms of our role, of containing the crime situation.
And how dangerous is it when citizens begin to see violence as normal?
I think it is something that's certainly negative, and I've alluded to it already, and it's really unfortunate, because I have to come in here with what you're seeing on social media as well.
Right.
Because my understanding is that people are committing very, very gruesome crimes and putting those things on social media. So on a daily basis almost, you have access to murders being committed live, so to speak. You have, mutilations, people using cutlasses and all these things, these videos being put up on social media where young persons can view these things become normalized, and it goes beyond. You ask about the negative consequences, how dangerous it could be. It's not just a case of becoming desensitized and stepping back in terms of our role as a society, in terms of our role, socialization role in families and all of that. But it's, the boundaries are being pushed to the point where violence itself becomes normalized in the society, right? And you have things like social learning processes, motivational processes, group influence processes, where young persons, may reach a point where they believe it might even be okay and acceptable to engage in certain types of behavior,
right,
including very violent behavior. So you see younger persons, let's say in gangs, for instance, want to outdo each other in terms of the levels of violence that they could perpetrate against others. And so the danger is that not only are you desensitizing a nation, but potentially you're socializing the upcoming generation of youths, especially those who have, I would say, unlimited and unfiltered access to social media content. You're socializing them into, a mindset where violence is something that is commonplace, where it is acceptable. And, the unfortunate thing, and I think we know this, is that the algorithms that are used on social media they will keep track of what you are viewing, and they will feed you more of this content. So if it is that you are viewing violence being committed, social media will automatically start to target you by putting more and more violence on your phone or your device. So it becomes, you become saturated with that level of violence. So it's a very, very disturbing thing. And I dare say this, I know this is going to be controversial. We talk about freedom of the press, freedom of access to information. But I dare say, and I wonder whether it will reach a point where it might be appropriate to at least filter some of this kind of content through legislative means, or at the very least educate parents about the kinds of parental controls you could potentially put, let's say, on your child's devices, so that you filter out some of this kind of content, because it is indeed very, very harmful.
Yeah. And, let's talk a bit on the effect that this environment can have on the youth, in terms of, are we at risk, of creating a generation that sees violence as a part of everyday life?
Well, indeed, I would say that's a resounding yes to that particular question. And we see it all around us. We see it in the schools, we see it in the communities. The moment something happens, it's already there, put up on social media for everybody to see, and you receive it on your phones, almost automatically. So we're so in touch with, the violence that is happening in society and the frequency of it that it becomes commonplace. And the ironic thing is that being bombarded with this level of intensity of violent offenses happening around you will alter your perceptions, and even so, in ways that may be inconsistent with what is happening. And I'll give you an example. We know, for instance, under the state of emergency, that crime figures are down, violent crime figures are down, not just for murders, but other types of violent crimes. They are down compared to previous comparable reporting periods. Yet, if you ask people what are their perceptions of crime, they will tell you that crime is sky high, and it's higher than it has ever been, notwithstanding that the actual numbers of murders currently are 50%, 40 to 50% of, lower than they were in the previous comparable reporting period. And the reason for people's perceptions is that they are being bombarded with each and every event that happens in all of the gory details of it.
Yeah.
So they're seeing it happening constantly around them. And, because of that, there are psychological consequences as well, I dare say. One of the big areas that focuses on that is the issue of fear of crime. And, when you're fearful of crime, and we have a nation, I dare say, that is extremely fearful, there are all kinds of consequences. The most obvious ones, of course, would be, you're spending a lot of money on security measures. I'm not saying don't put security measures in place. You definitely need to do those things. But you spend an inordinate amount of money on security behaviors, security expenditure. You change your behaviors. For instance, you curtail the hours at which you go out, the places to which you go to. But there are also psychological consequences like anxiety, depression, and so forth that happen as a result of fear of crime.
Yeah.
So it really, that perception really creates a problem for us in the country, because it's creating a society that is going to start to withdraw into itself. We are withdrawing into our homes. We no longer know who is the person residing next to us, or know people, in our neighborhoods and in our villages, when we in fact should. We should be networking. We should be, looking out and seeing what is happening in the village, what is happening with the youths, which vehicles are entering the villages, etc., etc. We should be collaborating and sharing information.
Yeah.
But a society that is becoming fearful is one that withdraws into itself. We withdraw behind locked walls and locked doors, and that has negative consequences.
Mm-hmm. And now you mentioned this. So along those lines, years ago, one murder would shocked the nation. But today, several murders in a weekend may barely even spark a reaction. Can you tell us why and, tie it into what you were saying before?
Right. So we're talking about the same desensitizing effects.
Yeah.
You see multiple murders and quite honestly, multiple murder events have been happening with some frequency and it just seems like the norm. And that's really, really unfortunate, because it can never be, even whether you're talking a professional criminologist or a member of society or, a police officer, etc., it can never be that these are just numbers. I think sometimes the only time that it really hits you and you really understand is if it comes close to home. And I think we've been desensitized to the point that we sometimes feel, this problem is other people's problem. And that's the mistake that we make as a society, because it's not other people's problems only. It's everybody's problem. When you live in a society where crime is at a level that it far exceeds that of many countries in the region and certainly of many international jurisdictions as well, right? And you don't really fully realize the impact of it until it hits home. Let's say it's a close family member or an immediate family member who becomes a victim of murder. That traumatizes the entire family and affects them for the rest of their lives. Imagine, for instance, if a family loses a breadwinner. So it's not enough. It's really not enough for us as a society to become complacent and think, well, oh, okay, just another murder, another triple murder, or what have you. It's a human life that is being lost each time, and that's a very serious thing.
And, does prolonged exposure to crime would you say it weakens the public confidence in institutions like, the police force and the justice systems we have here in Trinidad and Tobago?
It can, and it comes back to that same issue that our perceptions of crime may actually be far out of line with the reality of the crime. And I mentioned previously that under the state of emergency, we are seeing far fewer violent crimes occurring. Notwithstanding that, because of the bombardment from social media and other sources, people feel that crime is up. And if people feel that crime is up, then of course one of the avenues that they're going to go to almost very, very quickly or immediately is to blame the justice institutions. They're going to start to blame the courts, blame the prisons, blame the judicial system, etc. So it weakens the confidence that people have in those systems, despite the fact that those systems are playing a very pivotal role in actually keeping the numbers down. And the unfortunate consequence of that is that people's lack of confidence and lack of trust, which could be engendered, itself will contribute to the crime problem. And I'll give you a very, very simple example. Let's say people witness crimes. They may decide not to report it because they're afraid of the perpetrators, they're afraid of retaliation, they don't want to go to court, they feel it's a waste of time, they feel that the evidence that they provide really wouldn't just get, secure any convictions, they believe that the police is corrupt. So people's perceptions really play a very, very pivotal role in how they interact with the criminal justice system. And the thing is, the criminal justice system depends on the society, depends on the reporting from the society. It depends on the witness testimony that is provided by members of society to be able to successfully prosecute and secure convictions. So when the criminal justice system fails, it is also partly a failure of the society. And I think members of the society don't often recognize the critical role that they play in the justice process. And if we lose confidence in the criminal justice system, even wrongly so, and withdraw our input in the criminal justice system processes, then we are contributing to its failure as well. And that's really a very unfortunate consequence.
And is there a connection between, that economic hardship, social instability, and even increased tolerance of violent behavior?
So, now, it's one thing to talk about the relationship of economic hardship with tolerance of violent behavior versus engagement in violent behavior, right? There is much less research, and it's indeed, in my mind, quite unclear whether there is a relationship between socioeconomic hardship and the tolerance for violent behavior. But on the other hand, I could tell you that there is much more research looking at economic hardship and deprivation and engagement in violent behavior. And what the research generally shows is that communities that are neglected and marginalized and in which there is, very little access to legitimate avenues for upward social mobility, such as access to jobs, access to education, etc., you find that persons in these communities may have almost no choice but to gravitate towards sociologists call illegitimate opportunity structures, meaning quite often engaging in crime, joining gangs, other kinds of illicit groups that create other kinds of avenues for upward social mobility and for gaining that sense of recognition, that sense of status in one's communities, etc. So the thing is, there is that relationship, but what it signals, not for tolerance of violence, but for actual engagement in violence. And what at least that part signals to us is that when we have communities that are marginalized and stigmatized, we need to do a lot more, to build that sense of entrepreneurship, to create opportunities within those communities to change kind of stigmatization. But, coming back to your original question, which speaks about, tolerance of violence, I think that for me still remains an empirical question that requires, further research.
Absolutely. And now, is there a fine line between keeping citizens informed and overwhelming them with crime content?
There more than likely is a fine line.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there is a need for transparency, and I get that. Transparency, reporting, not hiding, the crime statistics from citizens. And there was a time, I know that CAPA, would put their statistics up online. I know that they took it down, in fact, for a while. I don't know if they put it back up, but that is certainly something that should be public. It's not something that you should hide from the public.
Right.
And if anything, the data that is there online would even serve to, at least affect the perceptions. People would know, okay, if you look at the statistics, and when reporters report on the objective statistics, they would be able to say objectively, okay, crime is down, so that people know, they have a sense that they are being bombarded by social media and it's affecting their perceptions in a way that might be out of line with reality. So I think we have to strike a balance. Freedom of the press is very, very important. Freedom of information is something that's very important. But we have to know as well that the kind of uncensored overload and the kind of graphic content, that comes through social media, etc., we have to ask ourselves, at what point does it become too much? It's one thing to report on crime statistics and give the background of an offense that has happened, but it's very much another thing to put a graph, in all graphic detail, the acts that, may have been engaged in during the commission of a murder. You have to say that that is information that could indeed be extremely harmful, and the research supports it. So you have to know when to draw the line. And I think, given that, at present there are no laws that would censor that, parents have to take the lead. They have to take the rein. And too often, I would say that parents are so busy that the devices become the de facto parent. And once the kids remain quiet and you get your space as a parent to do what you have to do, they are quiet and not disturbing you too much, then you feel that everything is okay. But everything is not necessarily okay. And, we as parents of the nation, the parents of the nation collectively, have to take the reins, because there are such things as parental controls.
Right.
And many of the parents out there, they are not up to date with the technology. The simplest things, for instance, they can't do on their phones. And when they have to do something like add a contact or send a message or something, they have to rely on their kids to do it for them, because they don't understand the technology. But what we as parents have to understand is that that very same technology gives the kids uncensored access to everything everywhere in the world. And I'm not just talking Trinidad and Tobago. There are atrocities happening in the Middle East and Africa, all over the world, and we have access to all of it, right? And so we have to take the reins. We have to read up on parental controls. Check ChatGPT. Let ChatGPT guide us if we can't figure out how to do it ourselves, and put those kinds of controls with passwords on our kids' devices, so we start to filter some of the content out. And I'm not just talking violence. I'm talking pornography. I'm talking anything that could really harm the kids. Those parental controls on the devices actually have, tabs that will allow us to select what kind of content we want to filter out.
Right.
And so the job is really an easy one, and it's just a click of a few buttons. It's just for us to take the time, and I dare say invest in our children's mental health and well-being by putting those parental controls in place. And, if the state isn't doing it because of freedom of speech and all of that, we as parents have the right to do it.
And if we compare Trinidad and Tobago, today to maybe 15 or 20 years ago, what major social changes stand out regarding public relations or reactions to crime?
Right. So, I would say 15 to 20 years ago, the society would have been a very, very different one. That adage that I mentioned, that it takes a village to raise a child, that would have been definitely true. I dare say it still exists in certain areas, and perhaps more so in rural communities than in urban communities. And it was a whole different scenario where those informal systems of social control were in place. And at the heart of it is the socialization process and the way that people react, whether negatively or positively, to certain behaviors that occur. So if a crime would have occurred, or if a youth would have engaged in something that was unacceptable, not necessarily even a crime, but something that is seen as unacceptable, people would have reacted. They would have reacted very, very quickly. And they would have reacted in a way that it signals very, very clearly to the child that that kind of behavior is unacceptable. So what it did, in effect, was that it, so to speak, constrained or shaped the behavior of children along acceptable lines, right? And of course, that would have been 15, 20 years ago. But things are changing. Things are definitely changing. And part of the landscape, I dare say, certainly is the desensitization that we're speaking about. But part of it as well is the economic commitments that parents have. We have, a large number of single-parent families, for instance, or even with families with two parents, both are working quite often very long hours. They have very little time to supervise their own children, much less to engage with other children in the community. So, and I mentioned the issue of fear of crime. As soon as you come home, you're looking left and right, you shoot into your gate, you lock the gate, you go inside, you lock your house. So there's no opportunity for you to see, kids outside in the neighborhood, whether they're doing something right or they're doing something wrong. Even if they're doing something wrong, you might peek through your curtain, but you dare not go out in the yard to tell them something and correct them. So I'm saying that the reaction, you're asking about, the reaction to crime 15 or 20 years ago versus nowadays, it's not just crime, but it's all kinds of unacceptable behavior. There would have been a much stronger reaction 15 to 20 years ago to unacceptable behavior, including crime, compared to now. So really what we have to do is bring back those systems of informal control. We can't underestimate the importance of that in terms of controlling the crime situation. You know, what I will tell you that one of the things, and it's related to this, one of the things that the Ministry of Homeland Security is pushing very, very strongly right now is the generation and implementation of interventions that target very young children. I'm talking preschool, primary school, secondary school. And the reason for it is that we know from a massive amount of international research that if you target the children, you know, when they're young, you're going to make a difference in the type of person they become when they get older. And this is something that's very, very important. And I think something that the society needs to know, that if we react, you know, in the way that we did 15 or 20 years ago, and we react in a concerted way, in a collective way that sends a very clear message to young children that certain things are acceptable and certain things are unacceptable, you know, then what we do is we'll be socializing a generation of children in such a way that we reduce their propensity for engaging in crimes. It's something that's very, very important that we as a society need to take the reins and I dare say go back to where we were 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah. And along those lines of that comparison or even change more so, are citizens now consuming crime almost like entertainment because of that constant exposure online? Would you say that?
I would definitely say that there's a yes to that. And it's unfortunate, you know, because as I said, it's not entertainment at all. It's very, very serious business.
It is.
You know, and you only really recognize the gravity of it, you know, if it hits close to home, as I said before, if it's a loved one, a close family member, this has the potential. Let's say a close family member being murdered. That could destroy your family completely. Your entire family could fall apart as a result of that. And it's not just the day or 2 days or 3 days after. It's long term. It will totally change the trajectory of your life when the children, let's say if you lose the income from one of the income earners or the only income earner, you know, and it's not only that, the supervision that person would have provided, you know, to the younger persons in the family, that's gone. The protection that person would have provided is gone.
Yeah.
And you're talking about negative consequences that could come. The kids in that family, for instance, become much more vulnerable, you know, to abuse, you know, because of the ills associated with poverty, educational failure, as a result of reduced financial support and psychological support and emotional trauma, even the anger, you know, that is engendered and the deep emotional trauma engendered as a result of that violent crime could put that child along a pathway where they themselves become extremely violent because they now want to lash out at others and at a society which in a sense to them, from their perspective, has wronged them. So it's a very serious matter indeed that I think sometimes we really underestimate, and it's not entertainment. It's not entertainment, right? But unfortunately, social media somehow has brought us to the point where people could witness, young persons could witness a brutal murder, and they laugh about it on television, not realizing the gravity of it. And we have to be able to distinguish between, you know, fiction on a movie from reality. It's a whole difference, you know.
Yeah, it really is. And in your view, the national conversation, has this conversation around crime become more emotional, more political, or more indifferent over time?
Well, it depends on which sector you look at. If it's the national public, more than likely, my sense is, and this is not from research, I'm not aware of research which has actually engaged in this, but at least anecdotally from what you're seeing on the news and so forth, people have tended to become much more indifferent. And as I think we've already clearly established, there are negative consequences as a result of that.
Right.
But, you know, as I mentioned, it all depends on who you look at. And if we look at this from a state and a governmental standpoint, what I actually see is just the opposite, because I am aware of what is happening in government and particularly in the Ministry of Homeland Security when it comes to the fight against crime. And it's something that is seen as very, very urgent. I know that there is a lot of activity happening right now. Officials from the Ministry of Homeland Security, for instance, convened a massive symposium several weeks ago, you know, and they brought together a lot of, in fact, all of the major stakeholders. You're talking Children's Authority, Ministry of Education, the judiciary, the prisons, the police, across the board, agencies that had to deal with children. They also, ministry officials also visited Tobago and pulled the stakeholders in Tobago together to discuss the issue and to start to generate recommendations, fine-tune those recommendations, and they've already started to put some of those recommendations in place. And as I said, the focus is on very young children in the primary school, you know, the preschool and the secondary school, and you know, interventions designed to reduce their propensity for engagement in crime. So this is something that is happening with pace, I dare say, and I sense a lot of energy. So there isn't indifference on the part of the government. So it really depends on who you look at for that question.
Okay, thank you for that. And lastly, what message would you like to leave with viewers about not becoming, you know, numb to violence or criminal activities around them?
Right. So we as a society, I would say we should not at all become complacent, because we've already established that becoming complacent really has a lot of negative consequences. We withdraw into our homes, into ourselves. We don't support the criminal justice system processes which lead to successful prosecution and convictions of criminal offenders. I would also say to the society to take the time, those of us who have children, take the time, read up on parental controls. If you don't know how to do it, you search YouTube, you can get a YouTube video which will show you how to put on parental controls in your child's phone or devices, or you check ChatGPT, that would also guide you very, very well. Put those parental controls on the child's devices, and you could be saving your child, because you don't know quite often what they are seeing, what they are exposed to. And I think if we as adults, some of us, were able to see some of the contents that the kids have access to, we would certainly be appalled beyond belief. So I would say take the few moments and do that little thing by putting the parental controls on your children's devices. You could be saving yourself and your child a lot of grief in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. C. Prasad, for coming on this morning and, you know, being a part of this conversation. It was truly,
my pleasure.
Yeah, it was truly informative and insightful, and I do hope that viewers looking on can take away something from it and, you know, be that brother's keeper that we once were 15 to 20 years ago, and really look out, because it does take a village to raise the upcoming generation. So it really shows a lot. You know, we need to get back to where we once were.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Guys, we are about to take a short break. When we come back, we have more engaging stuff for you, so stay with us.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back. Now we just want to thank Mr. Ramprasad and Dr. C. Prasad for coming on this morning and being a part of the conversation. It was truly informative and insightful for what they shared with us. As well as up next, we do have Sean Michael Small at 8 with Talking Points, so you'd want to stick around for that. As we observe Indian Arrival Month, we commemorate the arrival of the first East Indian indentured laborers aboard the Fatal Razak on May 30th, 1845. Today, we'd like to, just track back to when the British turned India to supply labor for plantations across the Caribbean after abolition of slavery. What followed was one of the largest movements of indentured labor in history, as thousands journeyed across the oceans in search of survival and opportunity. Now take a look at this video and I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.
These are some plantations in British colonies that operated just 100 years ago. Some of these workers are enslaved Africans. Some are indentured servants from India. Can you tell the difference? After slavery was abolished, Britain replaced its enslaved workers with a cheap alternative: indentured servants. In this new system, millions of people were coerced into signing away their rights for 5 to 10 years at a time. This system is not ancient history. Some of its survivors could still be alive.
बहुत दुख तकलीफ काटे के पड़ा। अरे हम गोरा लोग लाश से मारे इसे। अच्छा। हाँ। गोरा लोग लाश से मारे, काम नहीं करो, चाबुक लगाए गाड़ी पर। हाँ। कोई सुनवाई नहीं। हाँ। गिरमिट तुम्हारी।
These workers became bound to overseas employers where they endured harrowing abuse and exploitation for the duration of their contract.
I would call the system of indenture a hidden history, and it is and has been deliberately obscured from our national narrative.
Maria Kaladine's great-grandfather was recruited from India through this exact system. He ended up toiling at a sugar plantation in British Guyana for years on end. After seeing how her family's past had been buried, Maria decided to specialize in the study of Indian indenture.
We know about it because the British kept the receipt. They are there, all the receipts are there. They are there for everyone to see.
British colonizers took portraits of these workers after taking them from India to work in overseas colonies. Most would never return. Have a look at this record of Indian immigrants. These are the names of Indians who signed an indenture contract and boarded a ship from Calcutta on December 2nd, 1903.
It's an agreement between you and your employer that you will work for a particular number of years
As soon as they signed that contract, the indentured worker lost much of their freedom. They were treated like human cargo, shipped around the world and bound to their employer for the time period of their contract. They were bought, sold, overworked, and abused in ways far too similar to slavery. Here's how it all went down. By the end of the 1800s, the British Empire was growing to the biggest the world had ever seen. And the natural resources of the colonies, like sugar and cotton, earned the colonizers a lot of money. But labor costs started eating into Britain's massive profits after slavery was abolished. And that's when the British brought in indentured Indians. There were more than 3 million people like Maria's great-grandfather taken from their homes and placed on ships heading to British colonies. The overall trade for these cheap laborers replaced nearly a quarter of the Atlantic slave trade.
What has taken place is a retelling of the history of the 19th century that focuses on the abolition of the slave trade and lauds those involved in the abolition of the slave trade, but does not draw attention in any way to the fact that the system of slavery was replaced by a system which was very brutal, really cruel, and lasted into the 20th century.
The vast majority of indentured workers were from India. As a result of indenture and additional migration, pockets of the Indian community can now be found in nearly every corner of our globe. Over 32 million people of Indian origin live outside of India today, the world's largest diaspora.
India might actually be a kind of replacement for Africa. Think of this from the planter's point of view. They can't imagine a world that will deny them a source of labour, cheap, malleable labour.
In 1838, the first Indian indentured labourers arrived in Guyana, and that was really the beginning of the system of Indian indenture.
Some labourers were forced or kidnapped, but others signed on voluntarily, especially during famine caused by British colonial rule. But most didn't know what they were signing up for. Picture yourself as Maria's great-grandfather, Khalidin, who was living in Pipra, India. Wages are at an all-time low, the class system is not working in your favor, famine plagues your village. Recruiters employed by the British boast about the opportunity of indenture, guaranteeing high wages in return for a 5-year labor contract.
They often, frequently lied about what the terms of the indenture contract were, the distance of the place that people were travelling to, and the nature of the work that they would have to perform.
You can't read or write, but they tell you the contract provides round-trip passage to Calcutta, India, where you put in light labor in exchange for great wealth to bring back to your family. Like more than 2 million other Indians, you stamp your finger and take the deal.
In 1886, my great-grandfather was recruited in Gonda. He was taken to Faizabad. From then, he was taken to Calcutta as an indentured labourer.
What they didn't tell you is you're not really going to Calcutta. You're transferred from depots to shipyards, perhaps told your final destination would be Sri Lanka, but your ocean voyage keeps going and going. The ship itself is rancid, and you are crowded alongside parcels of rice, wheat, and hundreds of other laborers deep within the cargo deck.
Your voyage could have been one that was fraught with deaths from cholera, for example, typhoid, dysentery. It would have been quite traumatic for the immigrants.
You are lucky to survive the diseases that kill roughly 1 in 5 of your fellow passengers. Your peers bond over the shared trauma and call themselves the Jahaji Bai, or Brotherhood of the Boat. 3 months later, you arrive in an unfamiliar land, and someone tells you it is known as British Guyana, a British colony thousands of miles away from home.
He left Calcutta for Guyana, and he indentured for 2 periods of 5 years on 2 estates in Demerara.
This arrival story is way too familiar for the tens of millions of descendants of Indian indenture. Hundreds of thousands of people were taken from China, Japan, and Polynesia as well, forming an extracted community known as coolies, a term that's now an offensive slur. The laborers were shipped across 19 of Britain's colonies, namely in the Caribbean and South Africa. The Dutch and French also took advantage of the cheap labor for their own plantations. Indentured labor was used to cultivate sugar, cotton, and tea, as well as endless train tracks. As early as the 1840s, British officials were calling this a new system of slavery.
The vast majority would never see India again, and would end their lives working in cane fields on the other side of the world.
Indentured workers endured backbreaking work and were whipped and abused by white authorities. Many of them were even housed in the same barracks as formerly enslaved people. Indentured women were sexually abused by white overseers and sometimes assigned to an Indian man as his housemate and sexual partner.
There is a deliberate kind of denial of anything which does not meet the description of enslaved or free. These binaries are not helpful to people who are trying to express or explain what the system of indenture was. There are conditions of unfree labour that exist between these two states, and we must look at them, we must see them, they're part of our history.
And what happened when their indenture contracts ended?
You could then choose to accept a return voyage home to India, or you could again accept a further bounty and stay in the colony. And that's what the majority of people chose to do.
But why would anyone choose to remain indentured? Even after years of laboring, some people didn't earn enough money to bring back home. Others feared they would be shunned when they got back to India, accused of abandoning their family.
So from India, people were taken to Mauritius, to Trinidad, to Guyana, to Fiji, to St. Lucia, Grenada, South Africa, Malaysia. The system was huge, so over 2 million people were part of it. And it has left, obviously, a huge diaspora because the majority of people didn't return in those places. They are a remarkable people because the story of indenture is a story of against all odds survival. And it is a story of great sacrifice.
The trauma lasted lifetimes. In British Guyana, it took generations before descendants of the first indentured laborers were able to get off the plantation, find work, or own property of their own. And British colonizers didn't stop there. In Trinidad, British Guyana, and South Africa, the British inflamed tensions between formerly enslaved Africans and Indians, sowing divisions that continue to plague former colonies.
So we are still able to see the legacies of colonialism to that extent that they are part of the politics in those countries still today.
The indenture system didn't last forever. Indians in British colonies resisted their colonial oppressors for several decades. Although they didn't realize it, resistance efforts across the Indian diaspora culminated almost simultaneously in the early 1900s. In South Africa, individual workers rebelled on their plantations through desertion or suicide. Mahatma Gandhi later joined the Indian South African resistance movement, leading this major strike in 1913. In Fiji, indentured workers had the highest rates of suicide, using it as a form of resistance. In British Guyana, collective organizing ranging from demonstrations to resistance literature shook the nation. Some indentured workers took to writing in Guyanese newspapers to protest their abuse.
I don't think that the British have ever apologized. There is a very violent way of erasing somebody's history without it seeming to be violent, which is just not to talk about it, just not to acknowledge it.
Britain finally outlawed indentureship in 1917, but the system left behind a monumental legacy. Millions of South Asians were scattered across far corners of the world in a multi-generational Indian diaspora. Descendants of indenture in Suriname, Mauritius, British Guyana, and Trinidad cultivated a thriving Indo-Caribbean community. Indian South Africans launched their own political parties and joined in anti-apartheid efforts alongside Black South Africans. The coastal city of Durban, South Africa, became home to the largest population of Indians outside of India and is acclaimed for its Indian culinary scene. Assimilation was bittersweet for Indian migrants. They wanted to hold on to their cultural heritage, but colonial policies made this harder. In some places, it was punishable to speak Hindi. In others, Indians were not allowed to go to school or get jobs without first converting to Christianity.
I am sure that every indentured family has stories like mine, and I wish that we could just have some sense of, you know, the tragedy of it and also the remarkable nature of the people who survived it.
Today, indentured servitude may be a forgotten or even buried history, but many of the tens of millions of descendants want us to
WESN. If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful